Welcome to Brainstorm 9000.
Greetings, Internet Brains, and welcome to another episode of Brainstorm 9000.
Yes, so you just heard a person who we call Master McMaster trying to speak as if she is a robot.
I don't really know what I was going for there.
And my name is Dr. Schultz. So we call me Dr. Schultz because I'm a real doctor, although some people would argue that a psychiatrist is a real doctor. And we call Jane McMaster Master McMaster because she has master's degree in philosophy. And today we have an amazing guest whose name is Michelle.
Yes, welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
So we called you, as you know, but the brains of the internet don't know, to tell us the real story of how you used to take different supplements for brain health. So could you tell us how it all came about?
Yes, please.
So I've always been an anxious person, but about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I developed a really, really strong anxiety disorder along with depression. And my anxiety, of course, prevented me from going to the doctor because I was scared of all of the side effects of medication.
Right.
So I decided to look up things myself, which is a tendency I have for everything. Yes. So I came across a lot of things, and I did try really just a lot of different supplements and substances and chemicals that are supposed to be found in nature. Yeah, exactly.
Only holistic, so no ayahuasca?
No, I did not. I was actually very scared of that because,
Good.
You can get
Psychotic.
yeah, exactly. You can get like a drug-induced schizophrenia or something. So anything that that would cause something induced schizophrenia, I was just no.
Have you ever dropped any acid to improve your mental health?
I did not. I have not. That's also something that's scary. Like I said, anything that can cause a drug-induced schizophrenia, I stay away from.
That's fair. That's smart.
Yeah.
So no acid, no crystal meth,
None of that.
no cocaine.
None of that. No.
What about some pot?
I've tried marijuana for the anxiety.
Which one did you try? Indica or sativa? You know, it's called cannabis, and it comes in two main strains. One of them is called sativa, another one indica.
I've tried medical marijuana and I've tried just recreational marijuana, so I don't know what the recreational stuff was, honestly.
Right.
But
Was it helpful?
yes, for my anxiety. But then one time I fell into a horrible... I was already depressed, so it made it much worse, and I started crying for 5 hours, so I stayed away from marijuana for like a year.
Oh, yeah, that's no good.
Yeah.
I'm probably the only person in New York who has never tried marijuana, especially in my ripe 63 years old age group, the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. But when I was a baby, nothing was booming. I was in the Soviet Union. So, no baby booming for me. So I'm just asking you kind of ironically, although, see, I know the difference between cannabis and sativa, theoretically. So a lot of people say, and I'm not trying to teach anybody anything here, that sativa relaxes people.
It does the opposite to me. As someone with anxiety, it makes me hyper anxious.
Pot?
Sativa.
Sativa. So you prefer
Specifically.
indica?
I do.
Okay.
Indica has the effect on me, the same effect that sativa has on normal people.
I have that usually with medication.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So anything that usually works for someone else will have the opposite effect on me.
Oh, no.
And things that usually have like just weird side effects or secondary effects actually work for me.
So, you know, it proves the point that I'm trying to make here all the time, and I do make it all the time, so I'm going to make it again. People are very, very different. And I'm not the only one who understands it. So now there is a genetic drug testing, which is in the beginning stages, shows only how liver processes stuff, because everybody thrives for individualized approach. And that's what you tried to do, right?
Yeah.
On purpose or not, but you tried different things until you found something that worked for you, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, please tell us about your journey through supplements.
So I did a lot of research. I didn't use anything or tried anything that didn't have any type of research behind it. So some things were in the sense that they did have medical research, but the medical research was mostly inconclusive, or it had very little evidence to back up the effects of whatever substance it was. So the one that I used primarily that worked for me actually for anxiety, but not for my depression, was SAMe.
So
Yes.
can you tell us what it is, Sammy? Sounds very romantic.
So SAMe is actually highly regulated in Europe, and here it's sold freely because it's sold as a substance, but it does affect your levels of serotonin in the brain and other neurotransmitters. So I figured, okay, I could try it, and it's supposed to be almost instantaneous, the effects that it
Wow.
has. Yeah. So I tried it. I started off with 200 milligrams, which was the effective dose according to what I had researched. I tried 200 milligrams, and for a week, nothing happened. And then magically, literally after 7 days exactly, my anxiety completely went away. It was insane. I just woke up and I was fine. And when I say my anxiety was really high, I had an accelerated heart rate all day, every day. At night, I could barely sleep. I didn't eat. It was really, really bad. I was super tense. I used to get a lot of migraines before. So it literally just disappeared.
Whoa.
Yeah, it disappeared.
Very impressive.
Yeah, but my depression was still there. And I thought since I had used other supplements as well, I didn't give it enough time frame between each supplement to see which was actually working. I was like, this isn't working, so I'm just going to stop taking it. And then as soon as I stopped taking it, I was fine for a week. And then a week exactly, 7 days, I woke up and I was extremely anxious.
Amazing.
And I'm like, okay, this thing obviously worked.
Wow. That's like too easy.
Exactly, yes, crazy. But it's different in everybody. I did read that it usually works within 1 to 2 weeks. In some people, it works after a month. So it just really depends. And for some people, it just didn't work at all. So I figured, I might as well try it. So I took it, and then I started taking it again. I was anxious again for a week, and then literally 7 days later, I woke up and I was fine.
So you did your own kind of study.
Yes, but the supplement is extremely expensive, so that's exactly why I decided,
Oh.
let me go to the doctor, apart from the fact that I was still very, very depressed.
Right.
So I needed to do something for my depression. So I went to the psychiatrist. I was prescribed medication that I chose because, I'm like that. I'm very anxious, or was very extremely anxious. So I read all the side effects to every antidepressant you can imagine, a bunch of medication for anxiety. And I figured I'm going to go with this one because this one doesn't scare me as much. So I'm like, can I get this one? And he goes, that's probably not going to work for you. And I'm like,
Okay.
I will try it. And it was horrible. It made my anxiety so bad. It
no.
made it come back. And then I stopped taking it. And then the SAMe stopped working.
Oh.
It stopped working. It just stopped working. It didn't completely stop working, but I was very anxious. I was very anxious. So what I read online, according to the research, was you just up the dosage another 200 milligrams. So I started taking 400 milligrams a day, which had me okay.
Okay.
But still, it wasn't okay enough. It was just okay. I was able to survive and be okay with my anxiety, but it was still pretty high.
Okay. But
Yeah.
still like a noticeable difference from the 200 milligrams?
Yes, but it was nowhere close to literally disappearing from before. And the same exact process, I upped the dosage to 400 milligrams, and then 7 days later I woke up and I felt better.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I got to stick to this for a while because I don't know what's going to happen.
And then what happened?
So I started taking other supplements on top of that one.
Which is, you remember them?
Inositol.
Yeah, inositol.
Yes.
Yeah. It's popular with people who advise about taking supplements for OCD. For OCD, it has to be in a very high dose. And companies that make it high quality doesn't help us much. You still buy a large container. The container contains powder. And there's probably a scoop with which you have to measure it. And you have to take it a few times a day.
Yeah. So
Did it work?
It helped certain days.
Right.
So if I did extreme amounts of exercise and took that, I would be okay. It actually helped, but it did not help with the depression. It just helped with the anxiety.
Right.
But again, it was a hit or miss thing because sometimes it worked, and other days it just didn't.
Uh-huh.
And it was mostly during the days that I did a lot of exercise.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was very, and I took a lot, and you have to up the dosage little by little, because if you take it all at once, you're supposed to start with, I think, a half a teaspoon, because it causes digestive issues, so you can get an upset stomach or diarrhea. That didn't really happen to me. I didn't have, well, I also have IBS, and it was really, really bad at the time, so it felt the same exact way anyway. So my stomach was always messed up. And then I increased the dosage to about 2 to 4 tablespoons, I think it was. But again, this supplement is also very, very expensive if you want to get good quality stuff. So it was not working out. I couldn't afford it. So I'm like, all right, let me try something else. Because I was also using Xanax as needed. And again, I have this weird relationship with medication. Xanax worked, and then it stopped working. And it wasn't because I was abusive with it, because, of course, my anxiety would not let me take it for more than a certain amount of days because I was scared of getting addicted to it. And the dosage was just, I think it was 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram. It just literally just stopped working. It didn't matter how many milligrams I took. One time I tried taking 2, and it just did, it was like I never took anything.
Weird.
It was very strange. And it was sad because that was the only medication that made me feel normal the days that I did want to take it.
You got a weird brain, girl.
Yes. So then I'm like, okay. I looked up some other stuff because that's what I do. And I'm like, okay, Klonopin. So I started taking Klonopin, and usually that just makes people fall asleep. But that helped me through the day. I actually felt like I used to on Xanax. So.
Actually, a couple of ideas before I forget. So first of all, of course, Klonopin or clonazepam is not the medication that just helps you sleep. It belongs to exactly the same family of medications as Xanax does, benzodiazepines, with exactly the same mechanism of action. But the mystery for most of the medication is, and has always been, medications for brain stuff, is how come a medication from the same group works for you, doesn't work for somebody else, and vice versa, and also how come certain medications stop working. Also, what happens frequently with benzos, that's how benzodiazepines are called on the street, so to speak. With benzos, it doesn't happen that frequently, but with antidepressants, what can happen that, let's say, for example, you've been taking Zoloft, everything was fine, and then you stop. And
it poops out.
And then you decide a few years later you want to start taking it, and either it doesn't do anything at all, or gives you side effects that you've never had before. And don't get fixated on Zoloft. It could be anything, any medication from any class. And also, I have a question for you before I forget. We'll talk about it probably more. So, what was the benefit, or what would be a benefit, of taking large doses many times a day of a supplement as opposed to taking a medication which causes no side effects? Like, why people choose SAMI, anything?
Because the side effects are almost non-existent. I mean, diarrhea in comparison to, the sexual side effects that can happen with traditional medications.
Right.
I looked up a lot of forums and read a lot of people's experiences apart from the research. And that was mainly the reason why people just didn't want to take traditional medication, because they had done so for years or for months. For some people, it went away. For some people, it didn't. And they just started...
The side effects, you know.
Exactly, the side effects, usually sexual side effects.
Right. So people like you don't want to even risk developing side effects. You'd rather go a natural way, even if it's inconvenient dosing a few times a day, and even though it's expensive, because you don't want to pay the price of having the side effects.
Yeah,
that was
more
my whole
expensive
thing.
than my prescription medication.
Oh, was it? Yeah, like for the SAMI, it was very cheap. I found it in Costco, actually.
Right.
For, I think it was 60 pills for like $40.
Yeah, I just pulled it up on Amazon, actually. It looks like that's kind of like the median.
Yeah, on Amazon, it's 30 pills for about $25 or something like that. Or $30, actually. So yeah, it's very, very expensive. It's very, very expensive. But I was just terrified. My anxiety had me extremely terrified of everything. So.
By the way, maybe we should decipher what SAMI is. So it stands for S-adenosyl L-methionine, or methionine, maybe you should say. It's a compound that is found naturally in the body and is a part of cells, including brain cells, and also participate in the production of many biologically active substances in the body. And it's been reported that it can be helpful for depression. Apparently hasn't been your case, Michelle, also for liver disease and for osteoarthritis. So it is not very, very specific, and they also will tell you, like the Mayo Clinic, which is one of the standard reference places where people go, will tell you that you can have your upset stomach, nausea, insomnia, dizziness, irritability, anxiety, which in your case, it helped you with anxiety, also sweating, constipation, or diarrhea. So see, different people.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. I took it for depression because that's what people said it was going to work for.
Right.
It was a hit or miss with anxiety. I really just wanted to try to find something for the depression mainly, and well, I hoped that through that way I could somewhat deal with the anxiety. But again, medication and supplements for some reason usually have, or not usually, but I say a lot of the times have complete opposite effect in me. So it helped the anxiety, and my depression was just on the floor.
Right. So then what happened?
So I started trying other stuff.
Right.
I tried the trifiptan, what is it called?
Tryptophan?
Tryptophan, yeah.
Which is a precursor of serotonin.
Yes. I tried acupuncture as well.
Yeah.
Oh, how's
Yes.
that?
How did that work?
It helped a little bit. I think it was more of a placebo effect.
Not necessarily. There's tons of research that shows.
Yeah, there's a
that
lot of
shows-
research, but I think in my case specifically, it was a placebo effect because the person that did the acupuncture was just such a calming guy, and he was so nice, and
Right.
and he knew a lot about supplements as well. So he's the one who recommended that I use the tryptophan.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like, you can try it. It's not associated with any negative side effects. It just might not work for you.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. So I tried it, and it did not work for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I also tried kava kava.
For anxiety.
I did, yes.
Did it work?
It helped. It was more like a Xanax effect kind of thing. So
Right.
it would just work for a little bit and then
Yes.
wear off.
Yes.
With Sammy, my brain was a little bit relaxed, but with kava kava, it was more like, okay, my body can kind of relax a little bit.
Okay.
But that's
Interesting.
mostly what it was.
So
Yeah.
have you ever tried a combination of semi and kava kava?
Yes, I've tried a combination of everything.
Not
together.
giving anybody any idea. So was it better than each one of them separately or not?
No, it was pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
I have a question. So one thing that I really struggle with when it comes to trying to figure out, between like medications and supplements, like what is going to be the most helpful for me is it's so hard for me to parse exactly what is or isn't affecting me, because I feel like there's always something going on in like my daily life that causes like maybe my moods to fluctuate, or it's just, I don't know. So I'm curious like how you are like so confident in like how things are affecting you. How do you kind of parse that for yourself?
It's
I mean, you seem like a lot more in touch with your body in general than I am.
I guess you could just say I try to be self-aware.
Yeah.
On top of that, I also did as another technique for my anxiety, which was not a supplement, but it was a technique that actually has research behind it, is mindful-based meditation.
Yes, something that I've been meaning to do for a long time, but still haven't done.
I did a mindful-based stress reduction course.
Oh,
It was-
and that was helpful?
It was very helpful. It was horrible. It was horrible. The experience was horrible while I was in the class, and everybody saw me suffering. And at the end, because literally you just have to sit with your anxiety or whatever it is that you're facing at the time.
Yeah.
And you have to just let it go, in the sense that you can't wish it away.
You have to like accept it?
You just have to sit with it and learn how to be okay and learn how to accept that that's a part of you and it's okay to
Oh, man.
love yourself despite. So
I really need to learn how to do this.
it was very
Right.
there's a lot of activities associated with it, and when I was really, really into it, it was very helpful. Sometimes I do go back to those techniques because they are very helpful, especially something called the body scan. Yeah, you've tried that?
We've done that in my meditation class.
Okay, it's very helpful, and the instructor was very nice, and it was a good experience. I was doing that on top of a lot of other things. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so I
You're very proactive about seeking out
because
options.
because my anxiety was it. You have no idea. I don't wish this on anybody. If I had to pick one to stay with the anxiety or depression, I would pick depression.
Oh.
That's how horrible my anxiety was. I couldn't it's something very hard to describe. So I just
Right.
wanted it to go away.
But did you feel it anywhere in your body, your anxiety?
Yes, I was tense everywhere. Everywhere. Like I said, I used to get migraines.
Right.
My heartbeat would it was just 50,000 miles per hour. One time I remember I was very anxious, so I'm like, I really want to sleep, but I can't sleep. I have insomnia. So, but that day was really bad. I was very anxious. I went to the gym in the morning, and I do a lot of weightlifting because it's something that I enjoy. So I did a heavy set of weights. After that, I went to work. After that, I went to swim for an hour. And then, also I walked about 60 blocks. And I was still wide awake,
Wow.
like as if I did nothing. It was really bad.
So they used to call it nervous energy, whatever that means.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. I had so much energy, but it was not a real energy. It was a fatigue kind of exhausted energy.
Right.
So for the same reason, and because I was just scared of everything, because I do have generalized anxiety disorder, I just wanted to try a lot of different things that I thought could minimize any type of negative effects that could impact me in other aspects.
I would like also to say something that I seem to repeat quite a bit, but it's important for me for people to start realizing that it's very accurate, what I'm going to say. Sounds very obvious. People are very different, but we can divide people into two very uneven categories. A smaller proportion, in my experience, of people are very much in touch with themselves and in tuned into what's going on in their mind and in their body. So if you ask a person like that, for example, do you have a headache? They'll tell you yes. And the pain is throbbing, for example, and periodically it becomes pulsating, and it's always on the left side of my head, and it goes into my left shoulder. And sometimes if I turn my head to the side, it makes it worse. And certain food and smell makes it worse or better. And that can keep going and going about every single symptom.
It's very specific.
Very specific and a lot of detail because they are in tune, like they feel it in a very profound way, in a lot of details. The majority of the population that I meet in my life are not like that. So how is your head? I have headaches. Can you describe your headache? What do you mean? I
It's
just
a
have
headache.
pain. It's a headache. Is it throbbing? Is it constant? I don't even understand what you're talking about, Doc. Just give me a pill, right? True?
Yeah.
Right. Or we all have been to the movies. And I've been to the movies with different people. So I have a tendency to come out, for example, and start talking about what I saw and how actors played and whether it's total BS, what's behind it, what people wanted to say. And a lot of people don't get it. Not that I'm right, but they're not interested. You go see a movie, in the process of a movie, you enjoy it or not, and then you forget about it. The same is true about food, right? So you, luckily, fortunately or unluckily or unfortunately for you, are this part of the minority which is very, very in tune with yourself, right?
Yeah, I do consider myself, but I guess it's probably related to the fact that I've had a lot of mental health issues and I've tried to be insightful.
So, but you have a capacity to be insightful.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people are
would not
I
understand
agree.
it. So also for somebody like you, for example, mindful meditation work. For some people who don't have this connection, it doesn't make them bad or good. It's not going to work just because they cannot tune in or tune out. They're just not in tune. You know, they live it a different life.
I think I'm one of those people.
Not necessarily. You also don't know until you try, right? Yeah. So my understanding is that currently you are mostly taking medication.
Yes, I weaned myself off of SAMe because that's another thing. I was like, okay, now I'm taking medication that works for me.
Right.
I take Wellbutrin and I take mirtazapine. Wellbutrin actually made my anxiety better.
Right.
Really?
And for most people, it makes it worse. And mirtazapine had no effect whatsoever on my weight. And for most people, it just makes them gain a lot of weight.
Yeah, it makes them eat.
Yeah.
That second one, what class of drug is that?
Mirtazapine is an atypical antidepressant. Wellbutrin also is an atypical antidepressant, but the mechanism of Wellbutrin at least is guessed as like we guess that it affects dopamine, and probably there is some data to support it. About mirtazapine, which has a brand name of Remeron, people don't really know. The generic name of Wellbutrin, to make it totally crazy, is bupropion. Right? So mirtazapine is used very much so for the older population because it helps them to eat, and in many cases it also helps people sleep.
Yes, that was another great thing.
Right.
I have severe insomnia, and so when the medication was prescribed to me, I take 15 milligrams. So instructions were just take a pill before you go to sleep. I said, should I take half to, sometimes you have to increase the dosage. It's like, he said, no, just, you're not going to wake up.
Right.
And, yeah, he literally said that. I'm like, that's not true. Because nothing makes me sleep. I took half.
Try me.
I took half at, I think it was 7.
Right.
I was in bed by 8, and I didn't wake up until 8 or about 7 or 8 the next morning.
Nice.
It was insane. It felt so good to sleep.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I'm like, okay, so obviously this makes me sleep. So I stuck to the one pill after that because I should have listened, but I'd never listen.
Meaning one pill
One complete pill.
doesn't
Yes.
make you as sleepy as half a pill.
It made me very sleepy. Very, very sleepy. I slept very, very nicely for quite some time, but now it makes me sleepy, but I can't stay asleep anymore.
Right. So mirtazapine has this characteristic because of upregulating and downregulating certain receptors in the brain that have been identified. It has this paradoxical quality. If you take half a pill, you might sleep longer than if you take the whole pill. And the higher you go, the less sleep you might get. So, for example, in Europe, people start traditionally from a higher dose, not to cause sedation in people. But there are people, as we learn today, and we keep learning more and more from you, which react differently. The more they take, the more they sleep. So it's kind of weird. So you now are not taking the supplements.
No, so I once in a while I'll take kava because it feels nice.
Right.
I'm not going to lie. It's just nice, like your body feels kind of numb.
Right.
Like I said, it's not an anxiety reliever. It's more of just a muscle relaxer, I guess you could say.
Right.
Oh,
And you take kava in what form? Do you have it-
Liquid.
So extract.
Yes, tastes disgusting. It's disgusting.
Well, you can put it in a little bit of water.
It's disgusting either way. It's disgusting. It's really nasty, but it's just in one shot. But that's maybe once every 4 months, you'd say. I only take the mirtazapine and the Wellbutrin. Again, I weaned myself off from SAMe. See, the thing about SAMe is they only sell them in certain dosages.
Right.
That's the problem. And you can't cut the pill because you ruined the pill. So I had to wean myself off using whatever dosages were available, basically. So I was on 400. Actually, I had increased to 800, if I'm not mistaken, or 600 at one point. Yeah, because it wasn't working and I was desperate. So I cut the dosage. I think I went from 800 to 600, then 600 to 200. Now, with 200, it was tricky because there are 100 milligram pills, but they're usually for animals because, because it works for animal arthritis and stuff like that, or for joint issues in older animals.
Interesting.
Yes, they use that a lot. And I had found someone on Amazon that actually sold it for animals, and I asked him if it could be used for people. He said yes, but we don't really market it for people because 100 milligrams doesn't really have an effect on anyone. Usually it's 200 milligrams or higher. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I was still on 200 trying to wean myself off, so I didn't buy it, and then he stopped selling it. So I couldn't find 100 anywhere I went. I couldn't find it anywhere online, and so I just stopped taking it. And it didn't... I think if I just stopped taking it, I wouldn't have actually had any withdrawal effects.
Right.
That's me, because once I stopped taking the 200, I didn't feel any different. For a lot of people that I read, when they stopped taking it in any dosage, they felt severely depressed and anxious for months and months and months.
But,
Which is exactly why I wanted to wean myself off, which was the recommendation that I had read.
You wanted to wean yourself off. Why?
Because I was scared that I might actually get really, really anxious and depressed, because that was the reported side effect. That if
Right.
you stopped cold turkey, you would, especially at high dosages, you would feel that way.
But what made you stop to begin with?
Because I felt better.
On medication.
I felt better on medication. I was going to therapy, and that was working out really well. And I just felt like I was ready
Right.
to get rid of it. And my pocket was also very happy. So I still have a box. I don't use it, obviously. Right. But yeah, so I'm like, okay, so this medication is working out for me. I'm just gonna stick to that, and it's much cheaper. My insurance covers it, so just gonna deal with that.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that you don't have any regrets that you used to take supplements, right? Because at the time they worked for you.
Yeah, they were pretty helpful.
Right. And you don't have any regrets that you stopped because now medications work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And is there or isn't there a reason to talk what is better, what is worse? I personally think there is no reason, but maybe you feel differently.
Not really. Just
it's basically whatever works for a person.
Exactly, because some medication has absolutely no side effects for some people, and they have a ton of side effects for other, and the same goes for supplements. So
yes.
It's really just a hit or miss kind of thing.
And do you agree that if it's supplements, if you were to take the supplements, it's still kind of like a lifetime undertaking, because once you stop, the effect goes away, right? There's no cure from the supplements.
Of course, yeah. So that was also part of the process. I was trying to deal with why I was anxious and depressed versus just depend on medication, which is why I didn't want the medication to begin with, because that's how I felt, that I could just make it go away with other things.
Right.
Well, has your experience been then that the medication is in general more effective than the supplements just by themselves? Is that
for you?
That's kind of hard to answer, just because I think the therapy is what really made the medication work. Okay. I was in therapy without medication, and it wasn't working because my anxiety was so high. And I was really not, since I had mixed actual prescribed medication with the supplements, they also stopped working. Right. So I don't know if maybe if I just stayed with STAMI and stuck to it and went to therapy, if that would have helped my depression and I would have been fine.
It's always a combination of
exactly.
things.
Or if I would have just stuck with the medication, I went to therapy and that helped a lot. Mm-hmm. So it could have gone either way. It's very hard to say if one would have worked better than the other if I didn't give one a complete chance. Or the other one, better said, the first option. I did give the second one a chance, and I know that's what worked for me personally.
Right. So, of course, there's tons of research, because people have been trying to figure out what is better, medication or psychotherapy, including a particular type of psychotherapy, let's say CBT or insight-oriented psychotherapy, or the combination of the two. And guess what? The jury is still out. So some people, especially CBT people, claim that there is no difference, meaning CBT is as good, and for some people better, and medication could be, without psychotherapy, as good or better. Not that I have any data to back up what I'm about to say, but to me it seems, since I'm a big proponent of an idea, and I don't know how original I am, doesn't have to be that I'm original, that our brain, similarly to computers, has software. Of course, people are going to come back to me and tell me, so I'm like a pope because I'm talking about the soul. No, I'm talking about software. I don't know what it is. So psychotherapy affects mostly a person through cognition, right? So either way, whatever you do, even if you do purely experiential type of psychotherapy, still your neocortex is involved. You are thinking, you are processing, you are aware of what's going on. Yes, in the Freudian model, you try to achieve the insight in your subconscious and in your superego, right? But still, you are using your brain, right? Like you are thinking. With medications, although we don't know exactly how they work, we don't. It appears that they mostly work on, so to speak, hardware. But we don't know that. It could be that one of the theories is that when the medication comes in, it creates such an energetic imbalance, such a disturbance inside of the brain, that the brain starts fighting to regain the balance inside of itself.
Interesting.
And that's how it gets better. There is a theory like that. So I would vote for anybody to try to do a combination of both medication and psychotherapy.
Yes, definitely, 100%.
Right. And if you would like somebody to learn something from your experience, please feel free to share.
Yeah, I learned out of fear, that you just need to take a risk. I took a risk with all these supplements anyway. I should have just taken the risk with the medication, because at the end of the day, the combination of therapy and medication worked for me. My therapist just consistently told me you need medication.
Right.
Because to work here, your brain is too excited and you
Right.
want things right away. And that's not how it works. This is going to take some time, and you need some medication in order to process the information correctly.
Right.
And I was just against it, and I was against it, and I was against it until my anxiety went sky high, and I really couldn't take it. So it's crazy what the mind can do. And I was scared of medication because of my own anxiety. So if you need to do something, it's step back and try to be as objective as possible. And really think, is this fear for real, or is it just based on the fact that I have whatever mental illness, depression or anxiety? Is the reason behind this fear because my brain is not working adequately, or is it evidence-based?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like you said, medication and therapy together are great.
Well, most likely the combination is a good idea.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised to know, or maybe you wouldn't be, that until the early to mid-80s in the United States, everything was treated, except for probably schizophrenia, was treated with psychotherapy. So if somebody presented with severe depression or anxiety, they would hospitalize them, and they would spend a few years in the hospital having daily psychotherapy sessions of different kinds. And that would be it. And it's taken years and years for people to recover. And it would be very difficult to say whether it's a natural course of chronic illness, which is characterized by ups and downs. Sometimes you get worse, sometimes you get better naturally, or it was psychotherapy. So the addition of, let's say, Prozac to the picture certainly made an enormous amount of difference. And listening to Prozac is a very good book for people to read. It talks about this. It's written by a Harvard-educated psychiatrist who also happens to be a very good writer. It's an award-winning book. So I highly recommend for people to read it. I also have to say that in my personal opinion, with my personal experience with other things, I have to say that, of course, everybody has a right to try out whatever they find appealing to them, right? A very good example is, for example, dieting. When people try to lose weight, sometimes they go on high-carb diet, sometimes they go on low-carb diet, high-protein diet, until they find something that works for them. But one general advice that I would like to give is whoever you decide to work with, you need to appreciate and like, correct?
Yes. Because I had gone to a few therapists, actually.
Right.
And I hated all of them. They were terrible.
One of my clients told me once that finding a good therapist is more difficult than dating, and
It really
I
is.
could not agree. Yeah.
It's horrible.
The same is true about a doctor. I mean, like an MD. Yeah.
And then the worst part is, since here, it's, well, not just here, but in all of the world, it's a topic that's very stigmatized. So it's very hard to find therapists because they have waiting lists.
Right.
And the ones that you do find, there's a reason why they have slots available.
Right.
That's true.
It's a lot of work. It took me a long time to find somebody, and I wanted somebody that did CBT specifically, and it was actually very hard to find.
CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Master McMaster, any words of wisdom from you?
I think this has been such an enlightening conversation. And I
Yes.
guess I just wanted to highlight a couple of the things that I found the most helpful from this conversation. The first one was one of the last things that you mentioned, Michelle, that one thing that's important to consider if you have a mental health issue and you're kind of like deciding what you should do for it, you're evaluating your options, is to be mindful of the fact that mental health issues can really cloud your perception of reality. And they can really, like depression goggles are very strong. Anxiety goggles are also very strong. They have very different effects on you, but it can really deeply impact your perception of what's a good idea. So I think that's a great thing to keep in mind. And another thing that I got from what you said that I really loved is that, and we've said this before, it's just in your case it seems like such a powerful example, is that it really doesn't matter if prescription drugs are more effective than supplements, quote unquote, or if supplements are more effective than prescription drugs. Like, in terms of like objective data, it's going to be like, everyone's different. It's going to be really hard to ever find an answer for that kind of thing. But there's almost no point in finding an answer, because as long as you find something that works for you, then that's all that matters. Yeah.
On this positive note, as always, I recommend to you, the brains of the internet, keep yourself open.
Yourself open.
The brains.
Yes.
Keep your brains open and have fun. And Michelle, thank you very much for sharing with us your experience.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Goodbye, Earthlings. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Brainstorm 9000. If you like us, love us, or marginally tolerate us, hey, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever the hell you listen to your podcasts.